Okay, Frank, you are probably one of the very few still living and ex-Marines who was there at Iwo Jima. How old were you when you were there?
On Iwo Jima, I went in when I was 18 years, 8 months.
And how long had you been in the Marine at that time?
I had been in the Marine Corps about 2 years. I went in the Marine Corps when I was 17. So by the time Iwo Jima came around, I was almost 2 years in the Marines.
Now, today, Iwo Jima is almost like a symbol of like heavy fighting, heavy losses, and of course, everybody knows this famous image of the soldiers, the Marines, who had the flag on the hill on Mount Surabashi. When you went there, did you know it's going to be that difficult and that dangerous?
We had been told a lot of different things. Mostly we were told it would probably not be a big deal. We were told that it might be over in a few days. But my unit, the 2nd Battalion, 24th, out of the 4th Division, we were supposed to go in when needed, where needed, and we got needed. We thought we would be needed about third day. We were needed the first afternoon.
Now, I understand if I read this correctly, in the beginning, how did it go? Was there intense fire from the Japanese right from the beginning, or did you get on the island and then move forward and then suddenly they attacked?
Well, if you remember then, we had to go in because another unit was in trouble, 25th Regiment. So we were called in to help them. Well, we could not get to them immediately and directly on D-Day, the first day of the Battle of Iwo Jima, because you couldn't get down there. They're into the beach where they were on the right flank. No ships could get in there. It was a mess. So we were on a LSM, which is a landing ship that's used to carry tanks, a little too big for what we needed. But that was all they had for us to come in the middle of the afternoon. So we'd had to land on the left flank of the beach, and that left us about a mile away from where we were supposed to be, and we had to walk down there. All the way on that beach in the dark, it was getting dark, and through 5 or 6 other regiments that had come in and didn't know who we were, coming at that angle. So it took us about 3 hours to walk down to where we were supposed to be. We probably lost 100 Marines killed just doing the walk down there.
How many Marines were you when you landed on Iwo Jima?
When my unit came in, now I could go down all the way to a platoon size. There were 36 men. I don't know when all of them various of them got killed. But the day I left the island, 28 days later, there was only one left, and that was me. However, we lost a lot of men the first day. Remember, we lost more people on the first day of the Battle of Iwo Jima than they lost 10 years in the war in Afghanistan.
That is, yeah, mind-boggling. How, when you were there on the island, do you blend this out? Are you trying not to think about all the losses? What do you think? I mean, are you praying for your life, or how does this go?
Well, it's a funny thing in my case. I was a last-minute replacement almost. I joined my unit, the 24th Regiment. I joined them around Christmas of 1944. They had already been in 4 battles. I had never been in any battle. So I was coming in with a unit that was already 4 times in battle. And so the Washington Post asked me about 3 years ago, was I afraid? And I'll tell you the same thing I told them. Yes, I was afraid, but not so much of being killed or wounded. I was afraid, since I was brand new at this and coming in with people who were already, I was afraid I was going to do something stupid. So that was what I was afraid of. And we came in that day, I was still afraid I was going to do something stupid.
And how do you feel if you find out I'm the only survivor of my 36-person platoon?
Well, that was, of course, the last day. And there were so many other things. For example, I had been wounded 3 times, and all 3 of those wounds were bothering me as we were trying to get aboard ship. And I knew that I was going to have to climb up a long rope ladder and get aboard a ship, even though I had an arm that was almost unusable. So I had other things to think about that day, other than the fact that I was the only guy left in my platoon.
Do you think, God watched you those days? I mean, that's really almost like a miracle.
Well, it's a very strange thing. I wondered, why was I the only one who was left? And it bothered me or affected my existence, you might say, for the last 70 years. I still do a lot of things that I may not be willing to do if I was not, you might say, blessed with life. 70, most of the Marines who were killed on Iwo Jima were 18, 19-year-olds. I was barely 19 when we got back to Maui after the battle. So I have wondered many times, why was I left?
Because many Germans may be not familiar with all the details of the Battle of Iwo Jima, what was so dangerous? The Japanese, I think, didn't they hide like in the ground?
Well, the Japanese, yes, the Japanese had total different cultural approaches. Probably the most obvious thing that was different about what we were thinking and what they were thinking happened the first night. When we landed on Iwo Jima that first evening, the Japanese were coming up from underground. We didn't even know those underground passages existed. And you could see in the flickering light, the Japanese were coming up and they had swords or bayonets. They wanted to have a sword fight. And they were looking forward to that. And they had a certain amount of enthusiasm for that in their fixtures or faces. You could tell they were looking forward to cutting off some Marine heads. Well, we didn't go that way because I only weighed 155 pounds. I was skinny, and I was just pretty young, and I didn't think I was pretty good at bayonet fighting, so we would shoot. And many times I saw in the eyes of the Japanese guy that I just shot that night, I saw a look of contempt as he died. He would say in his mind, I could almost read his thoughts. That stupid Marine didn't even know how to play the game. I hadn't been willing to play his game of sword fight. I shot.
And the Japanese, they wouldn't just, the alternative would have been they would have given up and being a prisoner of war, but they were not going to do that.
No, they had always been told. Less than 200 Japanese surrendered on Iwo Jima. There were 23,000 of them there. And for the first 2 or 3 weeks, every time we would go out on a patrol or something, we carried a Japanese interpreter. And he would try in Japanese to encourage them to come forward and surrender. Their response was to try extra hard to kill their interpreter. It got a little hard to get people to go with you. And pretty soon we gave that idea up.
Today it might be a little bit hard to understand it. Iwo Jima was an island, like a small island, and at the time, was it really strategically important to get that island? Or in hindsight, do you sometimes think maybe we could have done it some other way and there wouldn't have been so many losses of life?
Well, there's some strange things about that. A lot of people don't know it. But historically, I know enough about the history of the thing. When it was first proposed that we take the island of Iwo Jima at a very high level, way above me, because I was just a private first class. So somebody said this would be a very good way to use gas. And here's an island that we could gas, and no, we wouldn't have to have any loss of life, American. President Roosevelt said absolutely not on that. We're not going to be the first to use poison gas in World War II. So that was knocked out very quickly. But it was there and proposed at one point. So there were other ways. Well, you have to go in then and you have to just simply do what's necessary. There were other things done at higher ranks that affected the loss of life down at my level. And I don't want to get into a lot of detail on those, but some of the generals made decisions that could have gone a different way, and you might have saved some lives.
And after Iwo Jima, what did you do after Iwo Jima? Was there another battle you had to go, or did they say, well, you really did enough, you can now go to a place that is not that dangerous?
Well, what happened after Iwo Jima, we came back to Maui. We got back to Maui early in April, and I had been promoted, got promoted a couple of times. The war ended in September. So I came home, got out of the Marines temporarily, went to the University of North Carolina, obtained a degree in 1949 in my field of music. And I wanted to teach college. I found out right away, though, you don't do that with one degree. You need several. I didn't have any more GI time. The Marine Corps says, well, come back in and we'll let you be an officer. We got another little battle started in Korea. So I came back in, went through basic school here in Quantico, Virginia, became an officer, and they used me for the next several years to train Marine replacements going over to Korea. The Marine Corps likes to do that because they figure that anybody who was in combat and then gets a degree or something and goes and becomes an officer, it's nice to use you in a training situation. So I was training Marines during the Korean War.
I have to go back to Iwo Jima. There is this famous picture of the Marines that take the flag and put it up on the mountain. Were you around when that happened?
I was about 3 miles away on the other end of the island. So I didn't see that flag go up. However, I did see it come down because what happened about 3 or 4 weeks later, that flag came down and it was replaced by a different flag. There was a 3-star general who was the highest ranking general on the island, and he decided about the 14th or 15th day of the battle, he wanted to put his flag up. He walked over about 100 feet, told the 4th Division Sergeant Major, that's my unit, that he would like to borrow some Marines because he will take pictures of his flag going up. Okay, we were coming in from a patrol. We were very tired. We were hoping to have a little rest, but we didn't get a rest. We had to stand in ranks and watch another flag go up. So we were not too much in the mood for that, but we did watch that 3rd flag go up, and it stayed up until the end of the battle.
That's amazing. Maybe one last question. If you have experienced something so, terrible with so many losses of life, do you sometimes still, even it's 70 years ago now, do you still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and think about that, or how do you deal with that?
There was a time I used to wake up I would wake up very afraid. I remember exactly what that was. That was the day second day of the battle, we took the first airfield, which meant that we have to go out on that airfield, no cover, no concealment, nothing. And you would have to drop down and use your weapon to form a base of fire. Then there would come a time where you would have to stand up, and other Marines would lie down and be a base of fire. And you would leapfrog over the airfield. That was one of the worst experiences I had, because just the idea of having to get up exposed, no concealment or cover, out on an open airfield under those conditions is pretty rough. But we managed.
I mean, today this is called post-traumatic disorder, I believe. I mean, there's a medical name for this. At the time when you guys came home, were there doctors or psychologists that kind of helped you through this?
There was a little of that available, but fortunately, I got busy in college right away, and I seem to have outgrown it pretty fast. And after that, I got married, of course. Along came Korea, another period of military service. After that, I got more college degrees. And so I went out to California, taught college, San Jose area.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. That was very, very, very interesting.